You want to start it?
Wait, I thought we already had a rules committee.
All right, I'm going to call the second special meeting of the 13th Undergraduate Senate to order. I will begin by calling roll. Senator Pintar. Senator Hawk.
Here.
Senator Dantzler.
Here.
Senator Burgess.
Here.
Senator Meekum.
Here.
Senator Chen.
Here by proxy.
Senator Adams.
Here.
Senator Polinsky.
Present.
Senator Najafi.
Here.
Senator Koshman.
Here.
Senator Fryer.
Here.
Senator Kenna.
Here.
Senator Martine. Senator Morrow. Senator Zitzman.
Here.
Senator O'Connor. Senator Leaney.
Here.
Senator Aljaber.
Here.
Senator Howard. Senator Legitimacy.
Here.
Senator Agdepa. Senator Robbins.
Here.
With 16 out of 22, quorum is met. All right, moving to the adoption of the agenda. Any discussion on the current agenda?
You can lose advising from student activities.
Okay. Any other discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, it will be adopted without objection. Moving to appear to public comment. Any members of the public wishing to speak at this time? Mr. Vahidi.
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Jason Chair. The elections commissioner wants to be here, but he can make it. The only thing he told me to say was just that this needs 2/3 to pass. He didn't say, I don't know if it's 2/3 of those present voting or 2/3 of all senators.
Of those present.
Okay, that's all I was asked to convey. So there you go.
Other members of the public wishing to speak at this time?
Do you get to comment on it closer to the referendum, or is this our chance to speak?
Yeah, so you have a public comment right now, or there's another period of public comment after the referendum is considered.
When is the vote?
This right here. So the second public comment comes after the referendum.
Do you mean like before we actually get started on?
Okay.
It's gonna be
Okay.
it's gonna be a referendum for students to vote on in the end of March.
Okay, and what I hear is you want to suspend the rule
Right now, we're voting
to allow anyone to speak. Okay, all right, listen, decorum, silence please. It has occurred to me that a senator will be suspending the rules to allow anyone to speak at any time. So you may speak now, and then moving forward, you should, depending if the motion passes, you should be able to speak during the consideration of the actual referendum. Before the vote. Yeah. Any members of the public wish to speak right now? Seeing none, we'll move on to reports from officers. First is Secretary Schneider.
Motion.
Yes.
Suspend the rules for the secretary's speech to allow public comment during the speech. I addressed that, but secretary.
Okay, so you're suspending the rules too.
Yeah.
Okay. To allow speaking rights from the public.
Yeah.
Okay. There is a motion to suspend the rules to allow speaking rights to all those present at the meeting. Is there a second?
Yeah.
There is a second. Okay. Is there points for or against suspending the rules? Seeing none, we will move to vote. This requires a 2/3 to suspend the rules to allow any member present to speak. All those in favor of suspending the rules say yay.
Yeah.
I'm going to make this as brief but as thorough as possible so that we can get as many questions in as possible today. And that we've heard a lot of student concerns. I want to address those, make sure that those are heard on the public record today, and that we take those into account as we go forward to this meeting today. So where we are and where we've been, in March 2014, the student activity fee was increased from $73.50 per semester to where it is now $88.50 per semester, which was an increase then of $15 a semester. The 2014 referendum also redistributed how the student activity fee was distributed. Before 2014, AUSG received 72% of the student activity fee, with AUCC and Media Board splitting the rest. Today, the student activity fee, like I said, is $88.50 per semester, distributed in approximately 50, 25, 25, but that's plus or minus 55%. So I guess here, AUSG got 53.5%, and then you'll see later that the other two are adjusted accordingly. Right here. So current funding for this year, which was academic year 2017-2018, the total student activity fee allocation after the stipend allocation and after $20,000 was taken off the top to contribute to a back fund. We had $935,000 to allocate to AUSG, AUCC, and Media Board. AUSG got 53.5%, or approximately $500,000. AUCC got 25.5 at $238,425, and Media Board got 21%, $196,350. The proposal which would be a student referendum. So if it's passed by Senate today, it would become a student referendum that goes onto the ballot for the entire student body to vote on in 2 or 3 weeks when we have our spring election for USG. So if Senate passes this today, it's not becoming policy. We're not raising the fee. It's that Senate approves it to go onto the ballot for the election in like April 4th and 6th. So the projected increase, assuming everything else stays the same, assuming stipends stay the same, and assuming the back allocation remains the same, the total amount for distribution would increase about $140,000 to $1,074,300. And assuming the allocation numbers stay constant, which is not a given, because those get negotiated by the leaders of the three organizations every year. AUSG would have an increase of about $75,000 up to $575,000. AUCC would see an increase of $35,000 to $273,000, and Media Board would see an increase of about $30,000 to $225,000. From our perspective, it would allow us to boost programming budgets. That would be the crux, actually, the only increase that the current administration of AUSG could see going towards. Obviously, that's up to Senate in the end, but we would recommend, obviously, that it goes to founders predominantly. We have historically not been able to fully fund founders with the budget that AUSG receives, and we rely on our reserve account. It's called restricted. For founders this year, we're not going to have a reasonable restricted reserve account that will be able to meaningfully contribute to founders. Which doesn't mean that it's going to be depleted, but it won't be able to fund founders in the way that it has in years past. So the majority of the money would be going to founders on our end. And then with the remaining money, it would go to KPU, Sub, and WI to boost their budgets, which actually saw cuts this year versus last year. Make no mistake, for USG, this is an increase in our ability to fund. From AUCC's perspective, it allows AUCC to allocate more money to student clubs and organizations for programming, promotional materials, and other supplies. Student organizations consistently request more money than AUCC has to distribute over the course of an academic year, and that's both semesters, so they split up how that works. And more funding will help AUCC maintain costs of utensils, printing and paper, storage, office supplies, and other collective services that AUCC provides to organizations. And this is what was provided through our discussions with AUCC. And I believe that's it. So I will take questions and concerns now.
Questions for the secretary? Senator Polinsky.
What do you think the future is of like programming on campus if we don't improve this? Do you think it's possible that we could still get the top speakers that we've been drawing in recently? Do you think it's possible that we can have as good of a founders as we've had? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think it's definitely possible. I think it's possible that we can maintain our current, like where we are now. It's going to become increasingly difficult. You know, at this point, I would say looking on the horizon is going to be difficult. Right now, we're still able to manage our expenses and we're able to pay for high-profile speakers. We were able to have founders at a big location this year and have a record number of students come. But I think right now we're starting, this would take care of us for probably about another 5 years, which is when it was 4 years ago that the fee was last increased. So I think we would be fine for next year. We would make our budget work so that we could fund founders. It would require more work on co-sponsorships and getting money from other organizations because our budget won't be able to, we won't be able to throw $120,000 at founders like it deserves. But we would be able to make it work at least next year. Beyond that, I would be worried for programming. Not just our programming across the board, because we're not the only ones that program. Clubs program as well.
Other questions? Senator Kenna.
From your perspective, do you think that this increase, if the students were to vote in favor of this increase in student activities fee, would the additional funds be allow for an expanded access to the programming that clubs and AUSG provides?
So I'm going to get to your question in a second, but it's a good time for me to address this. Even a student referendum is not binding in that it would not automatically raise our student activity fee. It's a recommendation to the Board of Trustees that we the student, if it were to pass, that we the students want the student activity fee to increase X amount. Now, where it becomes a little tricky is that this year is not a budget year, that the Board of Trustees is considering the AU's budget. So it would have to be potentially considered as a budget amendment in the May meeting. So it's not a guarantee that it even increases this year. It would likely increase the following year, if not this year. But that's what we would be looking at. If the student body does vote in favor, what I've been told is that they would be likely to entertain the budget amendment, but it's not a guarantee. And then to get to your question, I think from AUSG's perspective, as well as other clubs' perspectives, increase in funding and perhaps more importantly, increase in frequency of funding would be the most visible expanded access that, you know, AUCC doesn't run out of money, or AUSG is able to co-sponsor more events than we already do. So I think we can increase the size of our current events, but I think more important from my perspective and other programmers' perspective is frequency, that students will have more opportunities to go to events and see speakers and interact with their fellow leaders.
Other questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm Meredith Bartley. I'm the general manager of ATV. I'm not here to speak for Media Board, but I am on the Media Board. I just wanted to ask, why are you steamrolling this through such that you have said that it has the approval of Media Board when, as a member of Media Board, we had no idea, let alone approved it? I've spoken with several other Media Board members and they had no idea. I spoke to the co-chairs and they said they were approached. They had no further discussions, but you have been pushing this through. Why are you pushing it through so that you are even miscommunicating an entire 21% of the budget of who this would go towards in support?
Absolutely. So I had communicated with the co-chairs of Media Board starting about 2 weeks ago, I would say. And that coincided with my discussions with AUCC. And I personally had those discussions. As of yesterday and this morning, I did have the support of the co-chairs. And then I have an email saying, I understand that. And so about an hour ago, they reached out to me and they said that they wanted to discuss it more with Media Board and have Media Board take that into a vote. So if you bring up the text of the referendum,
But you were okay with putting out a post on Facebook that said the Media Board approved it when you know that it was just the co-chairs?
They said that they were okay with that language. So I took that as they're okay. So as far as I was concerned, they spoke their media. And as soon as they told me that they didn't, I had it removed.
Questioning has elapsed. Senator Fryer.
Motion to extend the speaking time to like unlimited however long the secretary needs.
There's a motion to extend the questioning period for as long as questions are necessary. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. All those in favor say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed say nay. All right, these have it. Other questions?
I'm not done.
Yeah.
You want to?
I also wanted to ask if there's any way that can we address the fact that with the 2014 referendum, it changed it to 50, 25, 25, plus or minus 5.
Right.
But for the past 4 years, it's always gone plus or minus 5. It's gone plus 5 in favor of AUSG. If you are including AUCC and you are being so concerned about other clubs being able to program, how are you going to ensure that it doesn't completely sway in SG's favor, which it continues to do through back battles?
So I can't guarantee that it will not sway in that 5%, because I think that's why the 5% was put in place initially to account for everybody's budget needs. I haven't been in back. I've never been Senate Finance Chair or President of AUSG, so I can't speak for how those conversations have gone in the past. But what I do know is that AUSG faced a budget cut this year because we did reduce hours from 55 to 53.5.
Media Board took a bigger cut because we teamed up with AUCC because we're the little guys. We teamed up with them so that they could get more, which is what they need because they consistently run out.
Absolutely. And I think by increasing the total pot, it doesn't resolve the issue of percentage of funding, but I think allocation is not necessarily the conversation that we're having right now. It's an important conversation and one that should be had, but right now we're looking at increasing the total pot so that everybody sees a budget increase regardless of the percentage of that increase. And next year, as we head into the budget year, I think we could have a conversation about solidifying a permanent percentage so that we don't have to deal with those 5%. Because when they did that, my understanding is that in 2014, that 5% leeway was added at the last minute. So I would want to correct that.
Other questions for the secretary? Yes.
So in terms of funding for all three, do the majority of, or if there were cuts, because like if this didn't pass and there were cuts in the subsequent years that you said would happen, would those cuts be like less co-sponsoring smaller events, or would we see it affecting bigger events, like in terms of programming? Would it affect larger or smaller?
Well, we wouldn't see cuts because we would maintain this at least the same number, the same amount of money and the same percentage theoretically.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't see like an actual monetary cut. What we would see is that it becomes more difficult to pay for things as they increase in cost.
Right.
So let's say founders cost $130,000 this year. Next year, for the exact same founders, if we tried to have it for some reason at the same location with everything the same, that could cost $150,000. That's how programming costs have been increasing over the past 5 to 10 years.
Yes. So my question would be, are we going to see founders shrink, or would we see $20,000 worth of club events because founders can happen?
I don't know.
Like, how would ASG handle the budget cut? Or if you don't know, then maybe come forward.
Would you like to yield?
I yield to Christine.
Comptroller, would you take a yield?
Yes.
Yes.
Will you answer the question?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll answer the question. So essentially, that would be a discussion that I would have with the Special Committee on Finance, and Senator Hawk and the rest of the members of Senate, and that would be like open to discussions with members of the public and things like that. Comptroller at usg.org. And so essentially, for me, one of the biggest things is that like the comptroller in an off-budget year, my role is almost like approving all the allocations and then co-sponsoring events with clubs. And the biggest difficulty that I've run into is that clubs will ask me for more money than I have, even in the budget. So I'll get asked for like $8,000 when my entire budget for the entire academic year is $6,000. So I would hope that it wouldn't be clubs, and I would hope that it wouldn't be founders either, but it's going to be a discussion of like where will we have to take that money from to make it work and things like that. And I also sit on the budget advisory committee. as comptroller.
Okay. And I would also add that AUSG's budget last year was 500,000 and change. 475,000 of that was programming directly, which is 95% of the budget. So when we talk about cutting non-programs, we're only talking about another 25,000 that we would be able to find.
Other questions for the
I
secretary?
yield to the vice president.
I would just say that if you have questions more about programming, I will be presenting a little later, so I can answer those in more detail about like specific programs and things of that nature.
Other questions for the secretary? Senator Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here. I'm just wondering, I know to some people, right, $11.50 a semester is not really like a big cost, but to others, you know, it's a lot to have to come here. Has there been some kind of conversation about like, is this like, how is this going to impact certain members of the community and if it's going to be viable? So people can actually, you know, can afford to do that.
Yeah, so we've had the discussion. So first and foremost, we think about student money as students reinvesting in other students and themselves. So just how we kind of, like our philosophy behind using student money is, would students want us to spend their money on them in this way? But in the affordability, from the affordability perspective, whenever a fee increases or whenever tuition increases, cost of attendance at the top level of the university increases by that amount. And when you increase cost of attendance, eligibility for financial aid increases by the same amount. So when you increase the student activity fee by $11.50, you increase the potential for a student. Let's say a student is getting a 100% need-based financial aid scholarship, or not scholarship, need-based financial aid. That $11.50 gets added to the cost of attendance, and that student is now eligible for the full cost of attendance, if that's how their financial aid package turned out. Assuming no other changes in a student's financial situation, that's how the cost of attendance increase impacts financial aid. So that's how we view financial aid in that regard.
And just, I guess, following up on that, one of the concerns of the member of the public earlier about allocation, you know, is there sort of an openness to renegotiate how money is allocated? It sounds like maybe perhaps some people are not really happy with how it's allocated.
Yeah, I think there definitely is. I can't obviously speak on behalf of AUSG, but I think firming up numbers so that we don't have to negotiate, because 5% is a lot when you're dealing with $1 million. And not having to negotiate that 5% every year, you know, I think they added it in thinking, oh, this is going to be easy. 5% is the difference between 45% and 55%. And to have to renegotiate that every year has turned out not to be easy, and it's turned out to be actually pretty difficult for each club, each umbrella organization to dole out and kind of have those conversations. Back has never been easy since they passed this. So I think firming up those numbers could be something that would be useful for everyone.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Secretary. Now moving on to President Payano's report.
I hate being in the back, but I'm going to stand up so you guys can hear me. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for making time to be here today. I can go up front, but oh wow, I thought that I would have to go to you guys, and I don't want to do that. Okay, sorry. I just want everybody to see me. So like I was saying, good morning. My name is Yamala Payano. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you. Thank you. It is. It has been. So welcome back from spring break. I am the new SG president. I'm still getting used to saying that. As Yamalat and a low-income student, I hear what you're saying. I think that this budget increase, I personally support it, and I hear a few of the comments that have been coming from the public. And as a student myself, I got to say that I would like to see personally more programming targeting my community, seeing more representation on speakers, making sure that student clubs get the ability to do and get the money that they ask for to do the wonderful work that they do, whether that is the multicultural groups, whether that is the arts clubs. Like, these are clubs that are important on this campus, And I personally, ideally, if we would have had more time, we would have had those discussions with you guys before. That doesn't mean that it can't happen anyways, because this is just to get it on the ballot. We have time to sit down, hear your concerns, and making sure that we all move as a single unit as possible. I personally would not talk on programming because Solomon is going to come and speak about that. But I do want to say that as a general idea, I do think that we need more funding in the pot because there's so much happening at these universities, and we have such an amazing body of students that have so many ideas that I think we should have more money to be able to fund them. I personally apologize to the media board if you guys felt that we misrepresented you guys in the memo.
I'm not representing you.
Oh.
I'm here to
Okay, so, but I do have to say that you're part of it. So I do think that your opinion matters. And I think that moving forward as SG president, I can assure you that I would like to engage in more of the discussion on reallocation of funding, as well as making sure that we move it. However, this is a meeting to make sure that we do have more budget and make sure that we all get the programming that we want to see. And as a low-income student myself, like I said earlier, I think it's very important that we do so because I would like to see more of the work that we're doing and more representation on this campus in the larger and smaller programming. I would take questions if anybody has them.
Questions for the president, Mr. Andrew?
Hi, I'm Andrew. I'm the artistic director of the mechanicals. I'm representing here. I totally hear what you're saying, and thank you for talking to me beforehand. That was really nice. I think you're really great. My only thing is, I agree. I think we all agree that there's a discussion around allocation that needs to happen. And what I'm saying is, I believe that that discussion should take place before we give any more money or we request any more money. Because I think, yes, we all need the pot to be bigger. But me personally, as a student, as a club leader on campus, I don't trust you all to finish the conversation. Because I've been here for like 3 years, and Bartow knows, and we try to get stuff done, and then it seems like the first president, I was like, let's get an arts council, next. Second president, let's get an arts council, yes, then next. And I'm really tired of that. So I think that before we give you the students agree to this or even ask, because I think it's a thing, like you're asking students for this money. I think that we should have the discussion around the specifics about allocation so that media board, AUCC, and other club leaders can feel more comfortable going into this so that when the money does happen, all those systems are set up and we don't have to worry about that, as instead of waiting more years to get those really fundamental changes to the way we allocate stuff, that just open those discussions without you just getting the money. Does that make sense? That's just what I'm thinking.
No. It definitely makes sense, and I hear you. I think that I would like to frame it an argument as an urgent need for money, and then this longer conversation that we do need to have. I would like Solomon to present. I think that there is currently, the secretary said, there is a need for a bigger budget because we're moving into a year in which we do need to program, right? We need to program for the next year. The way that this would work is that at the end of the day, we will have to have a conversation with Dr. Ah and the Board of Trustees, and we might not even see this increase until fall of 2019, because this is a contract increase with students. Therefore, by fall of 2019, I can't guarantee what the next SG president will do. I can guarantee what I would do as SG president. And as much as I only have 2 months and I'll be leaving in May, and I'm totally aware of that, I do want to have those conversations and make sure that when we're speaking now with Fronta'a and in the May Board of Trustees, that these issues are bringing it up and that we move forward. However, we do have an urgent need for money, and I think that that needs to be addressed and then have those conversations. I don't know what other SG presidents have done, but I do formally open myself to talk to anybody to make sure that we move as a cohesive unit.
Other questions? Yes.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you are recognizing, there's a lot of moving parts in that. But we're always in a need for money. There's never going to be enough for as much as all of these individuals want to do, and individual groups want to do, which is an oxymoron. But why what is the timeline for this? Because why are we steamrolling it through right now so that, you know, we've had this miscommunication with media board, we've had other like issues with this was just sprung on us the day after spring break. You know, why is it so urgent that, again, we're losing trust in you because we don't think you're going to handle the money right, because you can't even handle the referendum right?
So I think that the urgent came about due to the timeline of the elections. So what I think the intent behind having this referendum is that when we move into talking with Dr. Ah in the main board meeting, that we come in with the support of the students. So I think that what might have been lost in translation is that we wanted this in the upcoming spring elections for AUSG so that students would have a voice on it and to continue those conversations throughout. And then when we do move, we move in with the support of the students and making sure that we feel comfortable presenting this to the senior executives and the board meeting, and not just come up and say, hey, we want this, without consulting the general body. Because whether or not we want to admit it, the people that are here is not even 1% of the campus out there. And the only way that we can get the student support of those students that are out there is through this spring elections. So that's why I feel like we move hastily. And like, again, I apologize if the intent didn't come across that way.
Other questions? Yes.
I think moving hastily is not going straight to a referendum, because I think like me and like other like arts leaders that I've spoken to, and you talked about multicultural groups, like I didn't see this coming, and nobody's talked to me, and nobody's like sent out an email, a sweet Google form. They're very useful, like gathered like sort of conversations around that. Because you said you've spoken to the co-chairs of media board, and you've spoken to whoever runs the AUCC, the people, the chairs of that maybe. But then there was no like connection to the ground people. There was no connection to like the students. And I think going straight to the students and saying, this is what I honestly think it's not gonna work. But and then if it doesn't work, I think that puts us on a less strong discussion point. Because if we can't get the support of students, and we're gonna come back to them later and be like, well, I tried to get, like, I just think that the plans and everything ground up needs to, because I'm going to use the language of steamrolled. I feel steamrolled, and I feel like the stuff that we've been saying is not translating, and then you are going into another space to sort of fix the problems that, like, I don't know. So that's why I just think that there's a discussion to be had that is not going straight to this referendum. It's like, let's organize like a big group of the club leaders and people who use these like resources directly, and people who like, you know, not everyone goes to Founders Day. Not everyone's going to these events. Like, let's find out what's going on in there, as opposed to we need all of this. We need this increase.
So
I'm going to sit down, not because I'm disrespectful.
No.
I'm tired.
Questioning has elapsed.
Motion to extend questioning time
By
indefinitely.
by indefinite. Okay, and there's a second. All those in favor of extending questioning for the president indefinitely say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed say nay. Okay. Further questions?
No, wait, I want to like honestly address this. So, like I said, if I would ideally had a year in this seat, I would have ideally done that, right? When I was approached with the idea by my e-board, at the moment, and like I said, my intent behind it was let's start the conversation, although it might have been like straight to the referendum. But the moving pieces were already there, right? So Chris was already with the idea and in dialogue with other people. And as a respect to that, I was going to wait until we had this meeting so that then I actually drafted an email to you guys to be sent. However, this meeting was today and my email was supposed to come out tonight. So there was a time reference there. Like I said, I do think that we should come into a strong force moving this forward in the spring elections. And like I said, I'm willing to have this discussion within the next 2 weeks before this comes out in the ballots, and make sure that we have these discussions so that then when it is in the ballot and the larger student bodies having these conversations, we have heard all the sides of the pond, if that makes sense. But I do think that for next year, we do have a budget need that needs to be met.
Senator Robbins.
Thank you for being here, President Pano. Maybe this is a question for Chris, but maybe I'm not understanding something correctly, because what I'm hearing members of the public say is they feel like they're being steamrolled. This is really like going kind of quickly. And to be honest, it does sort of seem that way. Why is there this big push if, number one, it wouldn't take effect until 2019 and we're not in a budget year? And number two, like even if it fails, the board of trustees could still raise it. I'm just confused on those two things. Maybe that's a question for Chris.
I want to.
Do you want to yield?
You take the question? Okay, go ahead. Okay, I yield.
Okay.
So I think if I could go back like 2 months in time when I first started working on this, I would not make the assumption that I made that AUCC leaders and media board co-chairs could speak on behalf of their organizations, and that they would check with their like club leaders and sub-organization leaders, because I think that I went into this with that mindset that if I went to AUCC and media board co-chairs, that they would talk amongst themselves and come up with what we were talking about, round up. That didn't happen very inherently. So I think there's still a need, like Yami said, and obviously I would like to see this pass, but I see the criticism, and I would do this all over. If I could do this all over again, I would start the conversation with club leaders themselves and organization leaders. That being said, I don't think we're going to be in like an emergency state if we don't pass this. That being said, it would be very helpful to our budget and to figuring out how we're going to fund something like Founders, which is one of the largest line items on our budget. It's the single largest line item on our budget that goes to a single event. It would be helpful to resolve that issue, but we're also not going to be in like an emergency state if we don't pass it. So kind of answering that disconnect. Was there another part of that?
I guess my big question is, right, maybe I wasn't clear into that, I apologize. Like, if I'm understanding what some members of the public are saying, it feels like perhaps there's a sense of urgency to get this passed now. And so, like, where is that, like, why this sense of urgency?
Well, so I think
because there's no guarantee that they'll adopt, that the board will adopt this.
There's no guarantee, but that's the ultimate hope. And if we don't try, then it would be next year anyway. I think it would, again, be very helpful in our academic year 2018-19 budget. And if we don't try, we can't get it. So that's where we're coming from with trying to get it into next year's budget rather than waiting until next spring and doing it for 2019-2020.
And I think that what made it shorter too is the election period that we have, right? So we're trying to come into the boardroom with the support of students, which would make the case stronger for them to pass it. With that being said, even if this doesn't pass right now, I would still engage in those conversations because I think that we need this, right? And like I said, there's so many ideas out there that could happen if this increase happened, but then we also need to brace ourselves if this doesn't pass and we don't give it a try for the cuts that are going to happen next year, right? So I urge everybody in this room to think about next year and sort of the kind of programming that you guys want to see next year and try to like understand that like, yeah, this might not pass, we might not be in an emergency, but then what would be the consequences of not passing it, right? Which I think Solomon would be able to talk more than I do because he has been doing programming for a year.
Senator Polinsky.
So I'm like in support of like getting more money. Like obviously I feel like we need it, and I feel like just the cost of living in DC, making events happen in DC for Founders, bringing speakers in is going up, and we need it. My only concern is, and maybe Chris can speak to this more, is that if we are, I wouldn't say we're steamrolling this. I don't think that's an accurate phrase, but it is a little bit rushed, and I don't think we've done everything we could in order to get full support. So what happens if we get this on the referendum, we pass this today, and then the student population feels like it was rushed and they vote against it? Are we just going to try again next year? And then does that make us seem even weaker because we couldn't get it the first time? what's going to make us get it the second time? Do you think we should possibly wait till it's the budget year and have more time to do it the right way? What are your thoughts on that?
So I want to yield to the VP.
I think I'll address that in my perspective. I think that very tangibly, you'll see it in the programming. You'll see budget cuts. You'll see where we have to kind of make cuts to the programming, and you will see in the size of events, quality of events, caliber of events. You will see the cuts. And I mean, if students are okay with that, then we'll agree with that. But if we want to see the comments we've been having, the budget will have to increase, and it won't if we don't see it.
Like I said, I think that as student leaders in this room, think about the larger scale that this would have in your constituency, because then what we would hear if we don't do this would be, well, we're not doing enough programming, or I do not feel represented in the programming, or why am I not seeing what I want to see, or why I'm paying this university X amount of money. Yeah. Oh, wait, he was first. Yes, what's up? No, you're every.
This is still
every
questioning.
Yeah.
I'll ask you a question. I would suggest that the Senate let that questioning end for the president, so Solomon can present, because we're having a lot of programming questions.
Yeah.
While these people here are qualified to talk about that,
Yeah.
Solomon knows it in and out.
Yeah.
Been doing it for more than a year. Do you agree with that, Madam President?
I definitely agree. And I honestly think that also for your sake purposes, it would be great if Solomon come in and we let KPU Director Shaheen speak too.
You don't have to take any more questions if you don't want to.
I'm sorry, I don't want to feel like I'm cutting somebody off.
I motion to end questioning.
Great.
Thank
you very much.
Second.
There's a second. All those in favor of ending questioning, say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed, say nay.
Okay.
Moving to Vice President Self.
Meet.
Floor is yours.
I'm going to be somewhat brief so we can get to more questions. We have a lot of questions about programming. I think that looking at the budget as it stands right now, kind of events that we've had, programs that we've been on, cannot continue. I think that we heard from our students, they want KPU speakers to be in Bender. They want, for subs welcoming show. They want it bigger. These things cost more money. And in order for us to kind of put these events on, kind of meet student demand, we're going to have to kind of raise the fee, increase the budget so we can kind of produce the supply to meet this demand. I think that when I was a freshman, we had our welcoming show in the tavern, White Panda, who I've never heard of. But like, I guess it was fun. But we moved from that to Charlie XCX in Bender, ASAP Ferg in Bender, and we consistently, there's been more demand than we've been able to meet. In terms of like space, which Bender costs money, the more space you have, the more people you let in, the more money it costs kind of put on these events. For the founders, like getting more tickets. People say they get tickets they missed out. If we want more space, we want to rent kind of more the bigger venues, it costs more money. So I think what we will see if we don't get this fee increase will be the reduction in size and quantity of events in order to kind of meet a minimum kind of standard. So if we want to keep founders has historically been underfunded every year. It costs triple digits or six big figures, which is like hundreds of thousands. But each year it's around 75,000 is what it gets. We're constantly having to ask for money from Senate, money from RHA, ACC, all different kinds of places to kind of just put on the event. If we do not get that money, this money is increased for next year, we'll have to cut KPU, sub, possibly WI in order to make money, put enough money in the pot so we can have founders again, or we don't have founders. I think it's a little more urgent than we've kind of made it seem, that if you kind of want the events you've seen, if you like the events that we've had so far, Malala, Gabriel Union, except for if you like Amfest, if you like bringing Dulce Sloan in like at the end of the week, if you like these events, we're gonna need to increase the fee, because we're gonna need to increase the budget, because we simply do not have the resources to keep on these kinds of events as production speaker fees, those kind of things, lights, sound, those costs increase, we must keep pace. And I can't speak for ACC or a student media board because I'm not on those. But from student government perspective, so BP's cabinet programming, we need this increase. And if we don't get it today, then, and we're also not voting today to increase the fee. We're voting to let the student body decide. I think that we shouldn't stop it here because we think that they might not. I think we should let them decide. I think that's what we're here to decide today, is whether we're not going to let the student body decide if they want their fee to be increased. I'll take questions now.
Questions for the Vice President? Yes.
I'd like to pose to you the same question that Andrew asked. I think you're going to leave, but where is the infrastructure in place to ensure that these are going to the proper avenues? Because SG is trying to go bigger and better, and I really appreciate the programming you bring, but to consider that on the scale of the media board, in which one of our orgs has to decide between putting out the print edition and getting a new camera for the future, where's the infrastructure in place to compare these scales, and to protect the smaller orgs who are putting out new programming and not just the bigger and better and the flashier programming.
Yeah, yes, I definitely agree with that. I think that as we kind of consider programming as a whole, we need to consider student media board and ACC. But I also think that kind of, as you've heard from President, Comptroller, they want to have conversations. They want to make sure that we are treating this equitably, people who are on back. So I think that occasions happen in back, and I can't speak for what happens in these. I'm not part of those meetings. I think that you've heard from them that they are willing to kind of really sit down and talk about how we allocate funds and make this more equitable for everyone. I think that hearing them on public record saying that they're in support of this, I think is not necessarily a promise, but I think it's a very strong indication that we're looking at this very seriously, and that we want to make sure that when we increase the fee, that we can increase the pot in the budget to serve everyone, and that they get what they deserve.
Other questions for the Vice President, Mr. Fu?
So, as a club leader, you said we need to have those conversations with student leaders, ACC, and student media board more full. In my opinion, I think those conversations need to happen before we present this to the students. That way we have all our ducks in a row before we move forward with this in a more permanent way. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that I agree. I think that's a valid point, but I also think that for the purposes of this meeting, we're simply deciding what reference gets on the ballot. I think ultimately we'll see the support of club leaders or the lack thereof of club leaders of people, large student body, when we get to the ballot and vote. I think that we should let them have that say. Like if they decide against this, then that's their decision. Though I think stopping it here because we don't know is not fair to people who maybe aren't in clubs, who aren't in student media, who don't story things, but still want to see more from all of us. So I think that kind of stopping it here is unfair to them.
Other questions for the Vice President? Seeing none. Oh, President? Yeah.
So, can you anticipate if the increase doesn't happen, where do you see, from your budget, where do you see the biggest cut happening, and which of your units would be mostly affected?
I think the biggest cut will come from founders. Founders historically have been underfunded, I also said before, by usually somewhere around $30,000 to $40,000 at minimum. So if we do not get this kind of budget increase, I mean, like, when I have founders in Katzen or in the arena, catered by Domino's Pizza, like we can make that happen. But I mean, like, if you want to have Smithsonian's, you want to have buses to get to these events, that costs money, and it comes from the student body collectively. And so, I mean, I think founders will be the biggest cut. And if first from founders, still we'd have cut KPU stuff. So if you want vendor events, that's increasingly unlikely to have, back in tavern for welcome week with, I don't know, some random artist. I guess like my cousin raps.
I have a follow-up question. Can you let us know how many students were in attendance to this year Founders, please?
We gave out 2,500 tickets, and we still did not meet the full demand of students. In order to, like, these meetings can fit a lot more people, obviously. The museum was not full, but if we want to increase the numbers, we got to increase the funds.
And can you please elaborate on the feedback that you got from this year's founders?
I think the reaction was generally positive. I think a lot of people were very excited about it. I think a lot of people had a really good time when they were there. I think that we wish more people had been able to go, as we do every year. As we look forward, more people won't be able to go if we do not have the money to provide them with food, buses, like this space capacity. We will not have student demand will not be met if we do not increase the money so that we can meet these demands as they've been asking for years.
Further questions, Senator Polinsky?
So it seems obviously like you further confirmed that it's really important. I just don't know what's been done, and maybe you can speak to this. I don't know of anything that's been done to convince the student population that they should vote for this. And that's what I'm worried about. It's not like the validity of that we need more money. We obviously need more money. But I'm nervous that if we do it this year without any campaign in order to get more money, we're going to be stuck where we have no way in the next couple of years of getting any more money. Because once you do it once, I think you have to wait at least a couple of years because student population is changing, but it's not changing that much. So are you nervous that if we put this on the referendum this year, that we are just going to get voted down and then we're going to be stuck for the next couple of years and then we're just shooting ourselves in the foot by rushing it this year?
I think that it's definitely been kind of a more compressed timeline than I think any of us would have liked. But I think that ultimately, if we look at the people who've been to these events, who enjoy our programming, there is our support. And if they no longer want these caliber events, these size of these events, then they will decide that on April 4th, 6th. And then we will see the effects, consequences, very tangible consequences of this decision. And if they decide like, hey, actually we do want more vendor events, then it'll be students who decide whether we make free screen on the next referendum. So I think that we will very much have very tangible effects.
Questioning has elapsed. Senator Zitzman.
Yeah, I move to give the vice president and the KPU director both as much time as they need.
For questioning?
Yes.
There's a motion to grant a questioning period for indefinite questions for an indefinite time. Although, is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. All those in favor of granting the questioning time extensions, say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay. So I guess to finish answering the question.
Yeah, I'm gonna say in the opinion of the chair, the nays have that one. You're good.
How much time do you have?
4 minutes.
4 minutes. Okay, great. So I don't need indefinite time. I have no interest in being here for too much longer. So I understand and respect your times. I'm also timing myself as well. I want to give you all the chance to ask me as many questions as you all want. I'm a senior. I have 55 days left, so I'm not really interested in kind of playing this out in a way that I think talks about the process as a means of importance. But I think I did want to give kind of the perspective from the programming side as a director of KP, but also my work directly with club leaders over the past year about what kind of the fee increase means tangibly and logistically for next year's programming. So my comments will focus more on the fee increase writ large and less about kind of the process of the referendum. But I think I do echo much of what's been said and that I think it's important. I don't think it's an either or, which is how I think this conversation has been framed. I think you can both educate students and provide them with the opportunity to engage in this conversation and get this on the ballot. I don't think it's an either or. And I think it's a false positive to suggest that you have to do either one. I think both are vital and important, which is why we're here. So I have 3 points, so I'll be quick. The first is on inflation and kind of the pure economics of the proposal. The second is about equity, diversity, and inclusion. And the last one is just about access to events purely. The first on inflation, I think if you've ever taken an econ class, I think it's clear that I've done just kind of a rough analysis with past directors of KPU of kind of just how much tangibly things that you don't think cost that much money have increased over the past 6 to 7 years in the organization. Things from renting space to lights at events to speaker fees themselves. I think as we continue to, I think like Solomon has said, raise the profile, the price has also gone up. But I also think I think in this conversation, we've thought that it's really everything's about the Malalas and the Gabrielle unions, but I think it's also about the ability to program on a smaller scale, which I think goes to my second point around equity and inclusion. As KPU director, I've turned down, unfortunately, many requests in the past I don't know, 8 to 9 months, from leaders in multicultural clubs to gender-based clubs to clubs on campus that are doing a lot of the more, obscure yet important work of bringing people to the campus who want to see certain kinds of speakers, yet there's just no money in the budget to do it. So I think that while it's a conversation about, we can't fund Malala without X amount of money, I think it's also a conversation about X club here that maybe has a membership of 10 people wants to work with student government and wants to work with programmers like KPU, Sub, and WI, yet the directors in these places don't have the funds and the resources that they need to adequately respond to and collaborate with organization leaders. So I also want us to be keen on the fact that we're talking about large-scale programming, but also directors across the board this year have been really, really intentional with their work with smaller organizations, yet due to demand and a limited supply have had to turn down many, many students who, as young as first years, but also as old as seniors who want to do things and bring speakers to the campus. And then the last point I'll talk about is access. I think there's obviously the space piece, which we've kind of heard played out a bit, but I also think that, tangibly to provide, for example, there were 2,300 tickets issued to the Malala event. To provide more access to students for that event, we didn't use the full capacity, but because there are financial limitations to doing so, we weren't able to. So I think that we have to understand that what we're talking about here is very tangible. Like Solomon said, we will see the impacts on this, and students will see the impacts if we're able to provide, even in a small way, more access to our events. So I have more to say on this. I think directors, but also club leaders, I think while there is work to do to educate and build support, people are thinking about this and have been talking about this. So I encourage this body, in this time, whether you vote on this or not, to do the work of getting out and talking to some leaders of multicultural clubs and other clubs on campus. People are thinking about this in ways that you might not think, maybe not in these terms, but the conversation has started. So I don't think that we have to choose an either or today. I think we can get this done and do some hard work in the next 2 to 3 weeks to start talking to people because the conversation started. But with that, I'll take a couple of questions.
All right, questions for the director. Comptroller Machovic.
How quickly did Malala tickets sell out?
We had 4 ticketing times, I want to say, each time in less than 60 seconds. Tickets were gone.
Other questions for the director? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I have 3 quick things. One, as a reminder, the referendum that's being considered today in new business, you're considering whether or not to add this to the spring ballot, not whether or not to increase the student activity fee. You're just simply voting yes, the student should vote on this, or no, the student should not vote on it. 2, I know there were concerns about a campaign and not talking to people about this referendum. You can't campaign on a referendum until it's on the ballot and until it's certified at the nomination convention. So I know that there have been talks about a referendum campaign once this gets on the ballot, if it gets on the ballot. No, that's number 2. Number 3, the reason why this seems so fast is because referendums have to be, everything has to be certified by the nomination convention, which is this Friday. It's unfortunate that we had the spring break to deal with it when the info sessions happened the week before, but that's just how the spring is working out for us for the election cycle. But that is the reason why this is being considered, quote unquote, quicker than what would be liked, because it has to be on the ballot by Friday to be certified if it moves forward. Those are my 3 things. Questions for me? Senator Polinsky.
Maybe you can yield this, but can you talk about the campaign that would start after it's certified and like who's been talking about organizing it and the extent to like the groundwork that's already been laid for it? Because I think we're going to have that short amount of time to campaign for it, and I think we'll all be on board. But I think the problem is that it will be such a short time. I would hope that that groundwork has already been laid. So I'd like to hear someone talk about that.
I don't have any specific insight. You want to take that?
Yeah. So I've been advised by the chair of the judicial board that even if Senate votes to put this on the ballot, AUSG can't campaign in support of a referendum. Is that right? So even if Senate approves this, it's not like AUSG is going to be using its resources to push this. At the moment, I'm the one that attended the info session for this referendum. So I would be the one kind of like in charge of campaigning, not in my role as Secretary of Student Government. But do you have anything to add? But not in my role as Secretary of Student Government.
But we can individually, without our role, we can campaign.
Do you wish to take more?
Yeah. So there's a couple things you can't do. AUSG or Senate or anything itself can't endorse or campaign for or against the referendum. You can't use the AUSG logo. You can't use your AUSG emails to email anybody. You have to follow the elections policy book as if we are all campaign staff. What you can do is, as a student, not on any like your Senate Facebook page or anything, but as a student, you can campaign as much as you want in favor of this. AUSG might be able to send out information about the referendum, like the language and things like that, but there's not a pro campaign that can happen on AUSG's front.
Questions for me? Mr. Vahidi?
So I just want to clarify, I don't know if the J-Board should agree with me, but I believe SG would be allowed to tell people what would happen if there was an increase and if there wasn't an increase. SG just can't say whether to vote yes or no. Like you can't tell people how to vote, but like you said, information would be fine, right? Yeah.
Yes. Other questions for me? Senator O'Connor?
Will there be money spent on that information, like in terms of like sponsoring, like advertisements?
Do you wish to take that?
Yeah, so we can't spend student money through student government. And also, I'm not spending any of my money. And
I'm just saying, like, consider, if this is the same as a campaign, or campaigns of like, campaign finance.
Yes, so
this would not have that.
Student government would not spend any money because we can't.
Okay.
And I, as a student, am not spending money on it. That obviously, I can't stop other students, but I would hope that everybody spends money.
Other questions? All right. Seeing no other reports, we will move into new business. First, to the consideration of referendum 17-18-001, referendum to increase the student activity fee. How this will work is there will be a presentation by the sponsor, questioning for the sponsor, and then we will move into discussion/debate on this. So would the sponsor like to speak on this?
Sure. I'm technically the sponsor, but Chris wrote this, so if I can't answer anything, I will let him answer it. Yeah. So I've got three things. The first is just clarification about the Budget Advisory Committee, because that has come up a couple times, and it's kind of cloudy how it works if you don't spend your free time reading the BAC charter. Yes, but how it works in April when the Budget Advisory Committee meets, the important point I want to stress is that they have this principle that they have, they say majority of representatives, consensus of organizations. So that means of the 10 individuals that are there, 3 from every student activity, like umbrella group, 5 out of those 9 need to approve the allocations, and also a majority of the representatives. So in this case, for student government, 2/3 or 3 of Sarem, Christine, and Yami. So a majority of representatives from all 3 student activity groups. So there is not an instance, it's impossible in the Budget Advisory Committee for one of the 3 groups to literally have money taken away from them without their consent. Now, we might have an unfortunate situation where all the groups want more money than there is, and there has to be a tough conversation about where those cuts happen, but it does not happen that student government takes money away from other groups or that AUCC takes money away from whatever. It's always with 100% agreement. Second point, this has been said already, but I want to stress it, that this is a vote to let students decide. The thing about the referendum is that the president's vote has as much importance in this referendum as some random kid from your dorm. So if we are concerned about what students want, we should see what students want, and that's through passing this referendum. And the third thing is the bottom line. Yes, this could have been done better, but there's an old quote that you should never mistake the best for the enemy of the good. Just because it could have been better doesn't mean that it's a bad idea for the referendum to happen, because the bottom line is there needs to be more money for student activity organizations. And the Student Media Board just brought on a whole new organization. The Black Print is now officially AU Student Media. So their editor is entitled to a stipend. The AU will cover their website, so on and so forth. That's moving from 9 to 10 organizations. So that is a big deal for student media. Clubs always cost more money than there is. It's a law of physics. And look, we've heard ad nauseum about SG and why we need more money. So with all of that in mind, I think it's pretty clear that SG should let the students decide whether to raise the fee.
Questions for the sponsor? Senator Robbins.
I just want to make sure I'm 100% clear on this. Like, even if we as a group tonight decide to put this on the ballot and it goes to the ballot and the students approve it or not approve it, it's not binding. Like, it doesn't mean that just because we want it or we don't, it actually happens. Is that correct?
Student government has absolutely no jurisdiction over tuition and fee policy. We can't do anything even if we tried.
Other questions?
The last time we did that, they took our advice and everything.
Is that a question, Secretary?
I would try to clear for that answer.
Thank you. Other questions? Seeing none, we will move into discussion. Okay. Any debate or discussion on the referendum? Mr. Vahidi.
So I guess I'm.
Or Senator Legitimacy's proxy.
So like many of us, I'm really sensitive to cost increases. I depend on like a lot of financial aid to attend this school. But I think ultimately, like I've gone to a lot of programming this year, and it's all been really good. I really don't want to miss out on any more. Like I don't want to ask students for more money, but I know that if it's what I have to do in order to get what we've been getting and to get more of it is what it sounds like we'd be able to do. I'm personally supportive of it. That being said, we should also keep in mind that this bill is not the Senate expressing its support for its passage. It's putting it on the ballot so students can express or not express their support. So I think ultimately, even if we were opposed, and I was opposed at first, we should still trust the students to decide. I feel like if we don't put it on the ballot, then we are assuming that students aren't able to make that choice for themselves.
Senator Adams.
I think that we should let students decide, and I motion to close debate and move to vote.
I object.
I object.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion to close debate?
Second.
Okay, there's a second.
Mr. I have a question, point of inquiry.
Point of inquiry.
The language about the student media board should be removed because there was some miscommunication about whether it was the chairs or the whole board. So before we vote on this, has that language technically been removed?
No, because there is no amendment. No amendment has been made.
Okay, so yeah.
Okay, but we are still in debate. No debate, but yes.
Can I withdraw this?
Okay. No, because it's been seconded. Anyway, okay. So look. So we're voting right now on whether or not to close debate. If you vote yes, we're closing debate and we're going to vote. If you vote no, debate continues. All those in favor of closing debate on the referendum say yay. All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Nays have it. Now, back to debate on the bill. Senator Zitzman.
I move to amend the referendum by removing any mention of the student media board.
Second.
There's a second. Okay.
Yeah, you could technically put in language of the co-chair supporting, and is the public law comment right now?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Discussion on. I think that was it. Just those 3 times. All right. Okay, and there was a second discussion. Senator Polinsky.
Yeah, I think that's a better idea, and I don't know how like to word it, but I think that it's important to have the media board in there because Chris has talked to the co-chair, and although there are members of the media board who dissent, the chair does.
We haven't even been able to discuss it. It's literally the co-chairs said that they would go forward and speak about it, but the entire media board, it hasn't even.
No, I understand that.
It functions just like you guys.
Yeah, I understand that, but the co-chairs have said that they want it. So I'm saying, but the yeah, that's the wording that I would like. Is saying the co-chairs of AU Club Council, AU Student Media Board, and AU Student Government have unanimously agreed, which has happened. That's not a false statement.
Further discussion on what's in.
Trevor, I'm gonna butt in real quick. Can I designate him as my proxy? I have to go to class.
Yeah.
Must be nice.
Anyway, further discussion on the amendment. Senator Legitimacy's proxy.
I'm just wondering, for the first two mentions of the media board, are they about media board agreeing, or is it just saying that it would impact the media board's funding? Because that's a true statement, that the cut would impact the media board's funding. So I feel like it should be removed there, unless I'm wrong, just reading it.
Other points, Secretary Schneider.
So in terms of keeping something with co-chairs on, so yesterday at 3:42 p.m., the email that I got from co-chairs and media board was that this bill completely works, so I'm glad you were able to submit it. So that's why I went forward and resubmitted the bill. And then before this meeting, I got a message from the co-chairs on Facebook saying that they wanted their names removed. So I removed. So that's why I suggested, I told Senate to remove their names. That being said, I do agree that the first two mentions aren't saying that they supported it right now. It's just that last mention that would actually be in the language of the referendum. That shouldn't be my.
Further discussion on the amendment. Senator Legitimacy's proxy.
So I guess motion to amend the amendment just to restore the first two mentions.
Restore the first two. Okay. Whoa. Okay. Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
There's a second. Discussion on what's in blue, which is restoring what's in blue. I mean, these first two mentions of student media. Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of restoring what's in blue, say yay. Yay. All those opposed, say nay. Okay. Okay, so now we're back to what's in yellow, which is just removing this in yellow from the actual referendum language. Discussion on that.
Can I ask a question, Chris?
Yeah.
Chris, would the student leader of, I didn't understand what you just said, so I apologize.
Yeah.
Would they be opposed to it saying co-chairs representing AU Club Council, AU Student Media Board, and AU Student Government, blah, 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 blah,
The
blah?
last communication that I got from Student Media Board co-chairs was about now 2 hours ago. And it said that they didn't have a chance to discuss it. Like second thought, we didn't have a chance to discuss it with the actual board, the entire board. So can we remove our names from the bill?
Okay, so they
wanted it to be removed.
Okay.
Further discussion, what's in yellow? Seeing none, we'll move to vote without objection. All those in favor of adopting the yellow, which removes the wording, say yay. Yay. All those opposed, say nay. All right, further discussion on the referendum as a whole. Senator Robbins.
I wholeheartedly understand that it's a no-brainer to give money to organizations that need it. But what I will be honest, I'm somewhat on the fence. I'm a little bit undecided right now because it seems like tonight, voiced by members of the public, there's a real concern about how funds are allocated. There's a unanimous understanding and agreement that we need more funds, but there is a concern about how those funds are being allocated. And so there seems to me like a need to discuss that element first before we get more funds. And so I'm hoping that we can have a debate tonight about that, because just about the merits of that, because I'm undecided, and it seems like there are members of the public who really are concerned about the allocation before we even get more money.
Senator Burgess.
Oh, that discussion
lies with like Chairman Hawk and myself on the finance committee, where we'll have those discussions with the budget advisory committee. But that is not what this referendum is about.
Senator Zitzman.
Yeah, and also the current levels of allocation of the BAC were also decided by student referendum. So that is, as it stands currently, the student body's official word on the matter. Now, the student body can have the opportunity to change its mind, but I don't think like we should wait for more student impact or voice on that, on something they've already spoken about, especially considering that that could also, it could be from the students, which it already is from the 2014 referendum, and from the BAC, which is going to happen later. But I don't think any of that needs to necessarily hold up this referendum, which needs to happen if it's going to be on the ballot today through Thursday.
Senator Johnson.
If you have any issues with like the allocating of money, you can go to the directors too and ask them how they use their money and how they allocate that to different clubs and organizations for partnerships and things like that. But that's not the discussion that is germane to Senate and what we do as individuals. So if you'd like to have that conversation, I suggest talking to Shaheem and others. But there is urgency. We saw Founders and how that depleted our budget almost completely, and how we wanted to partner with other organizations and we just did not have the funding. And as I'll juxtapose this to the government, you see a budget increase every year because if you don't, there's a cut. They call it a cut even if you don't increase it. So we very much need to increase it. And I'm going to motion to close debate.
Second. Okay, there's a second. All those in favor of closing debate on the referendum, say yay. Yay. All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
In the opinion of the chair, the yeas have it. So now we will vote on the referendum. A vote yes means that the wording represented here in quotes will appear on the ballot for the spring election. A vote no means that it won't. Okay, so all those in favor of adopting referendum 1718-001 for the spring election, say yay. Yay. All those opposed, say nay. In the opinion of the chair, the yeas have it by 2/3 majority, and the referendum passes. Any no new business because this is a special meeting. No old business. So moving back to appear to public comment. Any members of the public wishing to speak at this time? Yes.
I think it's completely inappropriate to ask for more money when the student body does not have any trust in where it's going. Even leaders who are involved with this have no trust. I know my org would benefit from this. I just don't understand why we are continuing to ask for more money. And I just hope that the student body now makes the right decision, even though it's going so far.
Any other members of the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll move to go to the order. Any executive go to the order? Director Mascaro?
Yeah, all I would say is that while I personally am likely to vote in favor of this referendum, I completely agree with what you're saying. We should not be dismissive of student voice, and so I hope that we take this as a moment. I know we wanted to get out of here, it's hot, it's uncomfortable, it's Monday night, but clearly there's an issue with all three organizations and their ability to listen to the students that they serve. So when we move into this referendum, let's be cognizant of the fact that there are a lot of people on this campus who feel uncomfortable with the way that some of us tend to act as if we know what's best and push it through. As I said, I think this referendum, I personally happen to support it, but you make a very good point. I think we need to be a little more careful as we listen. But yeah, I mean, thank you. I'll be voting yes. So.
Director Sestero?
I would just say that I am, as the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, I invite all these conversations. I'm here to have this conversation with you about how we inclusively allocate all the money that may or may not be given to AU student activities next year. And I think we should, have those conversations not just in this room, but with the student leaders that are on campus. And I know a lot of them from positions in this work that I've done, so I'm happy to facilitate conversations with you all and them so that we can bridge that gap between, the student body that will be voting on it on April 4th and the people in this room who made the decision to propose it to the student body. So Rafael.Sestero@ausg.com or Facebook. So let me know if you want to have those conversations. I know a lot of you in the room, but I don't know all of you. So I'm happy to have those conversations.
Chair Wills.
I guess I'll go with your executive. Just to remind you, follow the policy book now if you're gonna campaign for or against this. If you have any questions, let me know. But it's all written down. So you can read it.
Other executive, go to the order. Seeing none, moving to Senate, go to the order. Senator Polinsky.
I just want to say, like, I'm happy that we passed this, but my first concern was that we're not going to get enough support, and this is like so crucial that we get this. I understand that we need to have allocations talks, but like, I'm personally nervous that our programming is going to go down. And I think that's one of the best things that student government does is founders and bringing in speakers are like the two things that we're known for. So if we don't get this to pass, I think it's on us. And I know we can't campaign as student government, but I think individually we all need to take responsibility. I don't actively share posts on Facebook that much, but this is something that I'm going to be sharing constantly because I think it's really important that we get this passed. So I know I can't say to campaign, like make you campaign, but please like individually do as much as you can to get this passed, because if it doesn't get passed, I think it's on all of us that we didn't put in the effort, and I don't want to see that happen, and I don't want to see us be screwed in a few years and have all of our budget depleted and just be screwed. Yeah, so that's all.
Senator Legitimacy's proxy.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Andrew said. Also, just make sure that you were not using it in your capacity for ASG. Otherwise, Noah and I will have to keep close eye. But I also just want to remind everyone that wow, I'm blanking out. Never mind, come back to me.
Okay. Other Senate. Technically, you're not his proxy.
What?
Because he didn't give the 3-hour designation.
That's not in the bylaws, that's for
Yes, it
committees.
is.
I thought it was for committees.
Technically, anybody can talk right now.
Okay, parliamentarian,
Yes,
what's the ruling?
He can talk as a member of the public.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. I'm disappointed by how this process happened. I'm glad that everyone's talking about like, oh, we can have the conversations. I'm happy to see that. I just wish we would have had more than 2 or 3 weeks to have the conversations. Because now I don't think we're gonna have a thorough enough, like we're not gonna have enough time to get, student meeting board, all the club leaders, not all the club leaders, but club leaders involved in this, and the conversation we thoroughly had about allocations and all that. I just wish the process would have been done. I wish this could have been saved to a fall semester, where we could have had more time.
Senate, go to the order. Senator Robbins.
I just want to say thank you to the members of the public who came tonight. I think it's important that we remember, like, we are the student government, and we have to represent the interests of the students. And what we heard tonight is that there are a number of people who feel like their student government is once again at a disconnect with their own interests. And they feel like they don't have a trust in how money is allocated, and they don't feel like they have a trust in making sure that that their needs are going to be met. So I really hope that we can leave here remembering that. I'm a little bit disappointed that debate was closed. I understand that we want to get out of here. It's a Monday night, but I think that the public is here and they really want us to be leaders on this and want their voices to be heard. And I'm worried that we're not reaching that. We're not reaching them.
Senator Legitimacy's proxy.
Thanks, Robert. So 2 things. First, I want to remind everyone that all Senate did tonight, like materially, was give students the option to choose to recommend to the board to raise the fee. That is all we did. We endorse it. Second thing would be that the allocation conversation, frankly, is going to happen no matter what. Not just because of the public interest in it, but because we have the plus or minus 5% rule, like it has to be negotiated. But I just want everyone to remember that if this doesn't pass, the conversation is going to be who's going to take the biggest hit. If this passes, it's going to be who's going to benefit the most. And I ultimately think the benefiting the most conversation is the better one to have, and who's going to take the biggest hit.
Other, go to the order. 2 things. 1, make sure you go to office hours this week. And 2, we have our next Senate meeting on Sunday at 1 in Kogod. And again, just to reiterate, make sure that in your own capacity, you either speak for or against this, not in a capacity of your position or in student government. Given that, and there's no other go to the order.
I have a question.
Yes.
Chair, are we able to talk about it immediately, or wait for it to get on the ballot?
It says that the elections commissioner has to declare it official.
So we can't push that.
Well, we'll talk.
Well, so nobody knows about it yet.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Seeing nothing else, we are adjourned.
Like the same company, should get Ellen Noir. Ellen Noir? The same company.
Oh, okay.
Really,